two non-human crafts approached the base, one landed, beings walked out and interacted with Air Force officials and CIA officials.
And they keep saying interdimensional, and then when you talk about the interdimensional aspect of, are these things pre-existing, maybe outside of what we currently know as our own dimension?
Joe Rogan discusses this 80-year cover-up of UFOs in our government, and something more sinister is happening. So this guy is coming up with a documentary that is going to expose all of the hidden things that are happening. And then I'm going to go to a video of Anna Paulina Luna. She thinks that they're interdimensional beings, and that's what I think. So guys, let's get into it, guys. This is all so crazy and fascinating.
One of them is revealed in the film, actually, but there are more.
Wow.
There was this... Several of the people in my film talk about an event that happened at Hallerman Air Force Base where two non-human crafts approached the base, one landed, beings walked out and interacted with Air Force officials and CIA officials. And a couple people go on the record talking about that in the film. But there have been other events, I've been told.
How are those beings described?
They were described as tall, slender, humanoid. And the another thing that I heard that gave me chills was that someone involved with a recovery interacted with a non-human being that was dying and heard thoughts in his head that said, you humans don't know your full potential. And that was said to me by a very senior, older guy.
That right there, though, sounds a lot like something the devil would say. He said that to Adam and Eve. You guys, God doesn't want you to be like God, like himself, to know good and evil. That's what I think.
From the intelligence community. And I thought that was pretty incredible. Also, just the extent to which the legacy program is real. This isn't like 50 guys, sitting in a quiet, dark room. You're talking about a massive program with thousands of people going to work every day and dealing with this. And to me, that is mind-blowing, Yeah. The guy next to you at the pizza place, on a Saturday night might be working on this during the day,
Right.
The guy who, the other father at your kid's Little League game.
Yeah.
This is what he deals with, right? The fact that is a thing. And, we had a similar dynamic for the Manhattan Project. There were always people working on it, and they kept it secret, right? And their neighbors and friends didn't know. But this is that on steroids. So, after the Manhattan Project, which was had a budget in the billions, this situation arose, and it had to be even more secret than the Manhattan Project, because the Manhattan Project, we found out in hindsight, leaked, right? There were moles.
Right.
So we needed to make this even more secret and give it more money and more resources and more, counter intel.
And this is what I think. There's a possibility that we're getting information from spiritual beings, and the government's getting information from spiritual beings. Listen to this. This is crazy. And they're using it to create artificial intelligence. That is the race. The Manhattan Project, that was the project everyone was working on for the war. But now there's another race. What is that race, guys? Come on. Artificial intelligence. That's crazy.
More threats.
Which is counter intel, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, threats if you reveal those secrets. But it's like the more this stuff gets discussed, the more I go back to what Lazar said. Because what Lazar is describing from the 1980s is exactly what these people are saying now. They've had these things. They've been trying to figure them out. They've been working on them. At least in the 1980s, they hadn't totally cracked it yet. But they did know how to operate them, and that they would do these tests. But everything was so compartmentalized. He said he wasn't allowed to talk to the metallurgist. There was different people that were assigned to it.
Yeah.
What they were assigned to do was to try to figure out how the propulsion system worked.
Yeah.
And then there was other people that were assigned to try to figure out how the metallurgy was formed. Because whatever it was seemed like it was 3D printed. It didn't have any seams.
Yeah.
And when he talks about it, it sounds exactly like what people are talking about today, which is really bananas.
Yeah.
Because this is late 1980s, and he's the first guy to crack through with this stuff.
Yeah. Everything is so, in that secret program, everything is so siloed out where you could have one team of defense contractors working on one thing. They're not even told it's from an alien spacecraft. They're just told, here's the thing. It might be Russia. It might be China. Tell us how it works.
Right.
They're just kept in a little bubble. And one of the issues now is that everything's become so overclassified and so siloed that it's actually hurting progress. And that's a lot of the scientists in my film are voicing that. And one of the other things I learned recently that isn't in the film, Jay Stratton, who ran the UAP task force, he told me that during that time, he had started a talk with one of the senior scientists at Lockheed, who was frustrated by how overclassified everything was. It even made it hard for the defense contractors to get the right manpower and brains on it, because not everyone can be cleared to do the work, right? There's all these like red tape hurdles to progress, right? And so they had made a plan to move one of the crafts that had been recovered that was in Lockheed's possession into the possession of the UAP task force. And then the task force was going to be able to put more brain power towards it. And then the head of science and technology at the CIA shut it down in the middle of the transfer. They had actually secured a hangar on a military base and prepped it to be a classified hangar that would hold this craft, and they were stopped. So the issue of overclassification.
Did they know what happened after that?
Yeah, the CIA shut the whole transaction down, and the craft stayed in Lockheed's possession. And then that particular leader within Lockheed died about 2 years later. So the effort kind of stopped.
Wow. I don't know. It's difficult because like people are experiencing these things. They're seeing these things. But what is it actually? I just don't think there's really any proof for them to be from a far, far away galaxy. What do you guys think? I just don't see it. But for them to be interdimensional, or they've always been here, that is 100% a possibility.
Cancer. The overclassification is definitely a hurdle for this. And our competitors don't necessarily have that. Like there's no free will in China. She can just be like, hey, you're the smartest guy graduating your class. You're going to go work for the nation on this,
Right, period.
And here, the problem is no one knows it's real. One of the things I hope the film changes is it makes the scientific community know that this is a valid area of inquiry. This is real. It's a real situation. And there's a ton of problems for the next generation of engineers and scientists to solve, And so hopefully it inspires them and helps us make progress, because there's a lot of progress that could be made here.
Dang.
Well, it certainly seems like it, but it's like one of the things that you guys propose in the film that I think maybe the only way forward is some sort of a mass amnesty to all these people that did lie to Congress and probably misappropriated funds and maybe stole a little bit here and there. Like if that doesn't happen, no one is going to push to make this public. No one's going to push for like actual full disclosure, because it leaves them too exposed. And if they do have the kind of power that they must have to be running an organization of thousands of people working on something with unbelievable amounts of money being transferred to these programs, they don't want to let that go.
Yeah.
Like this is like it's a honeypot that they're drawing from, right? And they're probably still taking too much, or there's no oversight. You're still lying to Congress. And you'd have to have some national security amnesty program saying, look, in the interest of national security, it's critically important that we get all of our best people working on this. The only way we're ever going to really do that is to completely reveal that this is actually really happening. This is real crafts from somewhere or something. We have them. We'll tell you where we have them. And I think right now, people wouldn't even freak out, because I would think that people would freak out if there was some sort of official narrative of disclosure. But that's sort of been breached, right? The New York Times breached that in 2017.
I think this film is that. I mean, this is 34 credible people putting their reputation and name on the line, which I honestly, Joe, I think it's stronger evidence than any video or photo.
Really?
These days, you could put a 4K video of a giant craft over Vandenberg, and half the human population will say it's AI or creating some visual effects program. But someone of note putting their name and reputation on the line, their career on the line, the rest of their lives on the line, to say this is what I know to be true. To me, that's the greatest evidence that exists. But
So he's saying this film is finally going to be the moment where everyone believes that there's UFOs. That's crazy. I think it's going to put a lot of perspective on the supernatural. Something's going to come out. Either people are going to believe in the supernatural. I hope. I've heard people say like, oh, aliens prove that God doesn't exist. In what way? What way possible is that? I don't see it.
I do think, to your point, amnesty is something that's going to have to be figured out because while it's hard for anyone to accept letting people off the hook for wrongdoings, right? It does seem like it's in the best interest of the bigger picture.
100%.
Because these people just aren't good. They have no incentive to come forward with what they've learned. And so to quote Rubio in the film, he says, look, this is not a endeavor to go and punish anyone, but we need to know what they learned.
Right.
And I think he's totally dead on. And,
is he in favor of some sort of an amnesty program as well?
Yeah, he says on camera in the film, he's like, I'm not trying to punish anyone. I need to know what they learned because taxpayers paid for this and it's in our interest to know what's going on. But the other thing that's needed is real whistleblower protection, not the whistleblower protection that's been passed so far, like much stronger legal protections so that people like the folks I talked to, the special forces guys I talked to, were going to come forward and then decided they thought to be forfeiting their lives. You've got to change that set of circumstances. You got to make those
How? What would they be afraid of? Like just their credibility or what? I don't understand. How are people not talking about this? That's what's mind blowing. Just, I don't know, people thinking they're not crazy maybe.
Feel like that's not going to happen to them.
Right.
And what I think ultimately is going to have to happen, and I wouldn't be surprised, man, if it happens soon after the film comes out, I think a sitting president has to step to the microphone and say, definitively, humanity's not alone in the universe. We have recovered technology of non-human origin. So have other nations. There is a high-stakes secret Cold War race to reverse engineer this technology. We need to win this race, and the U.S. intends to lead in this new chapter. I think that needs to happen, like a level set of basic facts, and I really do think it will happen.
Well, if that is going to happen, I think Trump might be the only guy that's willing to do something crazy.
I think it's very likely that he does that. I know
the world will be so crazy. I'm saying it's only a matter of time where people start thinking this. But I don't think it's from far of a different galaxy. Interdimensional beings for sure. The Bible talks about a beast will come out of the sea. Maybe there's some technology in the sea that we don't know.
I know that he is aware of the film. I know he's aware of what people in his administration say.
Has he watched it? You know that?
He has not watched the film, but I know he's very aware of it. And I know that they are discussing internally how they're going to react to the film publicly. And I also know that he has very recently, tasked Tulsi Gabbard with getting to the bottom of the situation and finding out for him what he needs to know that he doesn't know.
Really?
Yeah. And as Rubio said in the film, Rubio says on camera, on the record, on the film, that this has been kept from sitting presidents. And he goes into detail on how that's been done and how it's the career bureaucrats in certain elements of the government that control this information and just wait presidents out and don't feel like they have a need to know.
Right. Well, there were some people that tried to find information out in the beginning of the Trump administration. Who was it? There was someone that talked about it on record and said he was told at every turn that you don't have the clearance.
Yeah. Yeah.
How does a president not have clearance? That's what I want to know. Then who has clearance?
But here's the thing. Trump actually found out about the base facts in his last presidency and was contemplating stepping to the microphone then.
What base facts?
So Jay Stratton, who ran the task force, he says on camera in my film that he briefed that Mnuchin, the Secretary of Treasury, asked for a briefing on the lay of the land because Trump asked him to get the briefing, and Trump had already known that the base facts that we're not alone in the universe, that there's been recovery of crashed craft, right? He knew those base facts, and he told Mnuchin that he was thinking about going public, and so Mnuchin reached out to Stratton to get a briefing, and he told Stratton that the reason he wanted the briefing is because he needed to be able to evaluate what the impact would be to the economy if the president decided to step to the mic and tell the world we're not alone. And Stratton tells the story on camera in the film, and I've heard a lot more about it off camera. So we know Trump contemplated doing this already. Now I think the release of this film and Rubio's involvement puts enough on the table that it makes it easier for him to do.
I think they would have to have some sort of a plan in place if they were going to say that, right?
Right. What would that do to the economy? I could see people stop investing in things, and they might go crazy for a little bit, but in reality, what would it do? Do you think just people are going to start seeing more things? I don't think so. We got to be ready as Christians to be able to know how to respond to these things that might come out. As Christians, we can say, like, the Bible's already been talking about. The Bible had it right all along. We are not alone. We're not the only people in the universe. There's God. There's his creation. There's spiritual beings that he has created.
The amnesty plan, the idea behind it, would have to be in place if someone's
or at least grab control of the situation and say that this is real and the U.S. intends to lead the way. Because the other factor that the White House has to keep in mind is you don't want Xi or Putin being the guy to do that.
Right.
You don't want them to have that moment, right?
Right.
Something I always think about with regards to that moment of a president stepping to the mic, when we entered the space race, Kennedy gave that big famous speech, right? He was like, "We're going to lead in space, technology, space technology, like nuclear technology, has no conscience of its own. It's up to man to use it for good or bad, and we're going to make sure it's used for the betterment of all mankind, and we're going to lead the way." That was his whole rallying speech, right? And it made the whole scientific community be like, "We're going to help the U.S. win," rah, 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 right? I think that's needed in this race.
Wow.
Like, we need all the support of the scientific community of.
That's crazy. So now I want to go to Anna Paulina Luna. She's someone who thinks that the Book of Enoch and interdimensional beings had it right all along.
With the F-15 pilots at the unit. And so there had been an airspace incursion that had taken place when I was still at the time at the Guard. And I remember kind of talking to some of the pilots about it, and I was like, what was that? And they're like, we can't really talk about it. No one really wanted to address it. And so from what I'd gathered, that had been likely a UAP. And so that kind of was my perspective. Granted, I also grew up in the generation of the X-Files and, I don't know if you remember 94 Independence Day. So, for me specifically, I didn't look at it with, a crazy lens and perspective. I'm like, you never know if, we're the only ones out there, essentially.
But why did you assume that if it's a top secret incursion that he couldn't talk about, that it wasn't just a military craft from another country?
Because of the way that he was discussing it.
What did he say?
So he had been...
That's a great point.
He didn't want to, from what I gather, get taken off flight status. And he's like, I really can't discuss it. We couldn't really identify it, essentially, and it had outperformed them.
That's a great question from Joe Rogan, because how do you know it's not something just from a different country?
And so that was my first, from a military perspective, kind of experience with someone who basically, there's a stigma within the flight community. Do you want to lose your security clearance? Is there this level of crazy that people kind of brand that will stick with you and kind of ruin your career?
But doesn't he have instrumentation on his jet?
Well, at the time, right? So it's an older platform, but he really didn't want to even talk about it. And I bring that up because now with our investigation and the task force that I run, actually the reason why the task force was formed was because of an event that happened at Eglin Air Force Base where both myself, Representative Matt Gaetz, and Representative Tim Burchett actually had responded and gone to investigate multiple Air Force pilots that had come forward in regards to UAP incidences that had occurred, and they were alleging that the Air Force was covering it up.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that was that, and I'm happy to go into detail on that one, but what I will tell you is the stuff that I saw at Eglin, how the military responded, me being, a former service member, and then ultimately what I saw with the pushback of the military not even wanting to share with Congress information, which is a big problem because when you have Congress that's supposed to be the advocate and voice for the American people, the oversight body, and you're being denied access, not just from a base commander, but high level up at the Pentagon, even Secretary of Defense, it's a problem.
Do you think that it's possible that these are U.S. vehicles that are top secret?
I definitely think that there's a level of advanced technology that the U.S. government has. And I think that tech can be housed within the defense contract realm. And of course, some information is going to be classified. But I can also tell you, and this might sound crazy, but based on our investigations and stuff that we've seen, okay, there is definitely something that I think would rival what we know currently with physics, and a tech that potentially is out there that we don't have the ability to reproduce, because it would basically be like dropping a cell phone right off back during the time of maybe caveman. So we just don't have the tech to develop it yet. What I can also
Wow.
tell you is based on our interviews, and this has been something that you can go back and watch with the congressional hearings, but I was actually able to ask some of the witnesses, what are these things? And they keep saying interdimensional. And then when you talk about the interdimensional aspect of, are these things pre-existing, maybe outside of what we currently know as our own dimension? That stuff can kind of all sound crazy, but at the end of the day, my job as an investigator is to receive all the information, decipher it, and then ultimately from a congressional aspect, if you do have contractors that are withholding information or operating outside of the purview of the federal government, I mean, there's budgetary issues, but there's definitely something that I can tell you with confidence that exists that we don't know how to explain currently.
Wow.
So when you say that it operates outside our understanding of physics, what specifically are you saying? Like what happened?
To I guess break it down in simple terms is that I think that some of the tech that exists, that whatever these things have, these energy things have,
Energy things? What do you mean?
well, they call them interdimensional beings. I think that they can actually operate through the time spaces that we currently have, and that's not something that I came up with on my own. That's based on stuff that we've seen. That's based on information that we've been told. And then also, too, I think that there's this historical aspect of, this gets into the deeper theories and concepts of religion. And I think the history that we currently know. And that kind of spins off into another topic of, you have the modern day Bible. You have this aspect of Bibles or books of the Bible that have been removed that explain and kind of touch on these topics.
Yeah, this is interesting. I covered the topic of her talking about the Bibles being removed and whatnot. I don't think this has necessarily anything to do with what we're talking about. I mean, but she's saying, though, she thinks that this has to do with creatures from the Bible, creatures from outside of space, time, and matter. Guys, if God made space, time, and matter, and God is outside of space, time, and matter, and he made all things, do you think that these spiritual beings like angels, demonic beings, do you think they're bound by that same physical time like we are? I don't know. Obviously, they're not Yahweh, and they're not all knowing and all powerful. So I don't know what that would look like, but it could be different than human beings.
Topics. And I think that we're in a time and age where you have such a vast amount of information that we have access to via social media, via your cell phone, via the internet. And so it's really changing the way that we understand, the origins of life and the spiritual reality that we know.
When you
currently.
say interdimensional beings, that they know that these are interdimensional beings, how do they know that?
Based on testimony would be based on witnesses that have come forward. But what I can tell
So
you
the
is
witnesses just were told that they were interdimensional?
that they've seen things. And what I can tell you without getting into classified conversations is that there have been incidences that I believe where very credible people have reported that there have been movement outside of time and space.
That's very vague.
Yeah. So, look.
Unfortunately.
Yeah,
Dang, yeah, he's calling that out. To be fair, she's like, well, it's classified. I can't share with you. And essentially, how can you share that? Sounds kind of messed up. Joe Rogan called that out. That was good.
Yeah, look, have I seen a portal open? No. Have I seen a spaceship? Personally, no. Have I seen evidence of this? Yes. Have I seen photo documentation of aircraft that I believe were not made by mankind? Yes. Is there historical significance to this? Yes. Is there multiple events that go back to, I would argue, maybe even before the time of Christ that have documented this in text? Yes. So do I believe that the government has access to certain technology? Yes, to an extent. And I believe that certain contractors potentially have back engineered this tech. I think that that's what can explain the advancements that we're seeing. But I also believe that this is a dangerous level of hidden information from the American people, because if you have an aspect of the federal government, which I can tell you, I, with two other members of Congress, were denied access to information at Eglin Air Force Base pertaining to whistleblowers because of the fact, and we can get into that story and what happened at Eglin in a second, but we were denied access and told that we don't have security clearance or the read-in authority on a special access program. That's a problem, because I'm supposed to represent and be an investigative body, and you have then people who are unelected that are operating basically in secrecy. and that's a problem. That's a big problem.
And so how do these people have the authority to do that?
I think it's been decades of classified secret information, then also this aspect of the intelligence community that's been empowered. And it's kind of serendipitous with timing, because when you talk about the intelligence communities and what they've done essentially to the trust in this country with the American people, I think this goes all the way back even into JFK, with how they basically have operated outside of the purview of Congress and basically to an extent have gone rogue up until recently. You're seeing a big push and pull to try to rein in these intelligence agencies currently.
That's so wild. Man, is it true? The Interdimensional, or is she just a hoax? Who's gonna watch that documentary? It sounds interesting. I might watch it, definitely, if I can. I don't know where to watch it, but could this change a lot of things? Maybe.
Yeah. So what I want to bring it back to evidence. You said that you've seen evidence. Like, what kind of evidence have you seen?
I have seen photos. I have seen.
What have you seen photos of?
So I was in a skiff, and I can't discuss all that was in a skiff, but what I can tell you is based on the photos that I've seen, I'm very confident that there's things out there that have not been created by mankind.
It seems crazy that people have access to information that shows that there's something outside of us that is more intelligent, at least more capable than we are, and they hide it from everybody else.
What I can tell you is that when you have thousands upon thousands of people around the planet throughout time that have reported something.
Right.
To say that those people are crazy, to say that, the whole concept of even just asking the question that you might not necessarily be psychologically sound, that in itself, that's a disinformation campaign to get people to shut up about it. And that's a problem. We know that the U.S. government has not exactly been clean, and a lot of what they've done with the American people, specifically to the topic of UFOs.
Which makes you think that it's probably because there's something there. If you think about the motivation they had with Project Blue Book, when J. Allen Hynek was running Project Blue Book, this specific intention was to discredit all stories.
And he ended up ultimately, though, after all of his investigations, becoming someone that was like, I think there's something here. But that's true. By the way, a lot of people might not necessarily go onto Google and look up that information, but you can actually look up the declassified reports from Project Blue Book. What's also interesting, though, is when we're talking about tech, right? The ability for this tech, being that it exists, to change dependence for entire governments on things like fossil fuel, et cetera. It's look, I think everyone has a moral obligation to do what they think is right, okay? And so if you're in a position of power and you see something wrong and you're not addressing it, I think, this in itself, getting the truth out there for people to decide for themselves. I'm not telling you what to believe. I'm just telling you in our investigations and what we are pushing for in regards to transparency. I would like to see the federal government roll out some of the stuff that we've been given access to, because I think that information belongs in the hands of the American people. And it's not even just the U.S. government. I mean, there's other countries around the world that have done certain things like this. Now, look, I've had a lot of crazy people show up at my office and say, I've heard it all. Yeah, I've been to Mars.
Wow. That's crazy. So, guys, after this documentary's out, will people start to believe? Will Trump come out and say, there are other beings out there, we are not alone? I don't know. Will it be in line with what the Bible is talking about, or will it be something counterfeit? But all I know is Christians got to be ready to speak from a biblical worldview, and how can we explain these things? I think if it does, we could be like, the Bible's been right all along. Join the group. Maybe not that much, but oh man. So it's wild. I'd love to know what you guys think in the comments below. That is for sure. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. I encourage you to hit the like button and subscribe. I'm trying to hit 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I know we can do it with your help. So thank you so much for all the love and support. It means the world. Have an amazing day, and God bless.